all right, here we are once again at the kitchen table. You know what time it is. You know who I am, Pastor Bobby D. Hampson. We're here at the kitchen table. And as always, we break it down, chop it up, and put it back together again. I told you that in this month of July, we're going to be focusing on economics, how to handle the monies, how to use God's money, and how to become more astute when it comes to economics. And today, I'm so glad to have a guest here who I call a financial guru, Dr. Thomas Williams. Thomas, will you say hello to the kitchen table audience?
How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Amen. Now, Thomas, if you would, tell us exactly who you are and what do you do?
So my name is Thomas Williams. I am a professor of finance at the University of North Texas, a Houston native, and a family member, right? So I'm from Houston. I had my undergrad in finance from Texas A&M. I got my MBA from Texas Tech. I worked as an investment analyst for Prudential for a few years and then decided I want to go back to school for some reason and went back to Tech and got my PhD. And then, after that, I've got married and had 3 kids, lived in Missouri, in St. Louis. I was at the University of Missouri there for 8 years, and I came back 4 years ago.
Okay. So Thomas, so you are well steeped in what we're preparing to talk about. My first question, obvious question, why finance? Why did you choose to go down the path of majoring and getting educated in finance?
Well, that's mostly my dad. He from early on, he had me looking at the stock pages and learning how to read a stock quote. I was always good at math, really. Mm-hmm. And it kind of just gravitated towards finance. A lot of people switch majors or what they do. I actually stayed pretty consistent throughout. But one of the things, I was good at math, and I was interested in knowing more about companies.
Okay.
And stocks and investments.
Okay.
My dad was real big on that.
Okay. Amen. So in your being a professor at a university campus, with the students you have that come to you, what are you preparing them for?
So, really the biggest thing I would say is to prepare them how to think, to think critically, finance, accounting, whatever it is you want to do. What's really important is to get people who can think critically and convey information to other people who don't talk like them, right? So engineers talk a certain way, marketing and management people talk a certain way, finance people, and the skill, you can get anybody to do accounting or finance, but the real skill is getting people, young students, to think about an issue really critically, questioning, what a firm is doing, what's the future look like, and then move from, like chess, and kind of move from there. Well, what's the next step of that? Right? Okay. It's the critical thinking that employers tell us a lot that students that they want in upwardly mobile students.
Wow. To be able to critically think, to really think through. I like you say, like a chess move, your next move, and your counter move.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate. So now, in saying that, people are watching now and they're wondering, we're going through a pandemic. We're trying to kind of dovetail our way out of it. What do you see on the horizon as far as the economy looks?
Yeah. Well, that's somewhat difficult, but we're assuming the pandemic's not going to come back, roaring back. And what you've seen is that the economy has slowly picked up back to where it was pre-pandemic. And I think basically you're not going to see a roaring economy, right? Everyone has gotten these checks. Come September, the checks are going to stop, right? To a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
So, the workforce is going to pick up some, but really what it's working toward is back to where we were before the pandemic started. And we're just about there at this point. And so you're not going to see some huge explosive growth. The other thing that people have to pay attention to is that the economy is changing, right? I mean, mall traffic is going down, right? People's consumption patterns have changed now. More and more people are going to Walmart, not just Amazon to buy stuff. You can pick up stuff from Walmart, Kroger, HEB, right? So this evolution of how companies are changing after the pandemic, many of them aren't going to go back.
Yeah. So what does that mean for the person who's looking to find a job in retail, or they're looking to
Right.
get into management? What kind, knowing that's what's happening with the economy, what does that mean in terms of the job market?
So, right, if you're in retail, right, that's a tough place to be right now, right?
Okay.
Because companies are now figuring out, like, for instance, one of my wife's cousins works for Allstate at a call center. What would have been a call center before, now they just gave her a computer and some systems, and she does it at home. So now Allstate, a lot of these companies are rethinking, like, we don't have to have call centers and buildings and all that kind of stuff. We can just do it at home, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, for people like who want to be stay-at-home parents or homeschool their kids, at a certain level now, there's more opportunities because companies are much more open to that now.
Right.
So
Right.
I think companies just have to be more flexible now because employees want that flexibility. More and more people aren't having to work 9 to 5.
Right. Right.
If you're in retail, it's time to rotate.
Time to do something different.
To
Yeah.
be honest, right? The place you see in Dallas and in Houston, logistics is where you can still do very well. We have family members that work on the railroads, or particularly because Houston and Dallas are both logistics hubs. UPS, FedEx, Amazon. Amazon's hiring anybody they can get a hold of. I know that for a fact. Right?
Sure.
They don't have enough people. So you think retail, you say, well, I don't know about Costco is fine, let's say, right?
Right.
But I don't want to be working in the mall.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it just requires a little bit of that chess move. Like, what's the next thing? If you're in a mall, you got to get out. If you're working in retail, you want to be in the right retail place. Amazon's a great example of that.
So Thomas, so looking at your financial crystal ball as much as you can, and that's kind of hyperbole, is you're telling how the businesses, how they're going to make more money now.
Yeah.
What can the consumer, how can they use this time advantageously?
Sure. That's a great thing. My wife and I talk about this too. What we've done during the pandemic, I speak personally, we have kind of gotten our financial house in order. And while we don't have to have the advantage for us was we didn't have daycare because we were all at home, right? So we kind of view that time period as this is the time to get like the winter before the spring. It's time to get everything in order, and so that you have your financial direction kind of laid out. Like, we have a 13-year-old. We're going to have to put someone in college in 5 years. We've got to start saving for that. And I would say that, a lot of people got checks and then they spent them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now's the time, if you can, if you're not behind in bills, to get ahead, to save. Right. I always think in consumption, you either consume today when you're 30, 40, whatever it is, or you consume when you're 60. If you consume too much today, you can't consume when you're 60.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The less you consume today, then the more you can consume as you get older.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thomas, explain for us in terms of, because I like what you said, get your house in order. Now, from you who have a PhD in finance and you're a professor at university campus, and you deal with some of the mind that's going to impact us for the future, what do you mean to the average consumer, to the average viewer, when you say get your financial house in order? What does that look like?
Sure. So, one, right, if we've been trying to keep up with the Joneses, right, credit card debt will kill you, right, financially, right, and just racking up large amounts of debt. One is credit card debt. Which is a symptom of something else, non-financial, right? If that means you're living beyond your means. Something is going on if you're consistently using credit cards and not paying them off. So my wife and I use the credit card for food, but we track it each month and then we pay it off at the end of each month. So we know how much we're really spending on food. But if you're on HSN, QVC, wherever you are, and you're racking up just large amounts of debt, you're living beyond your means.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even matter what your means are.
Yeah.
And at a certain level, we've all kind of done it. And that's why I said, like, hey, if we can't pay for it outside of an emergency straight out, like, we don't need it.
Yeah.
And it's that the thing that a lot of people struggle with, like, we don't want to live check to check, right? And that means making some hard decisions. We don't need 2 car notes at one time.
Yeah.
right? If you can
Yeah.
avoid it, that's a tough one. You got two car notes, a house and a mortgage, or even rent and a mortgage. I mean, rent and daycare. That's a lot for
Yeah.
anybody,
Yeah.
regardless of what your means are.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And
That's
I
right.
think
Yeah.
people don't. You got to start making hard choices, and they're not necessarily hard. Just changing habits. Just like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's a good word. That's going to help them to really, because I'm always hearing about how the businesses are getting ready to boom,
Sure.
and even businesses are actually cutting, as you said, they're cutting back their own expenditures. But us as consumers, many times, we're kind of ramping up our spending, and we're kind of lowering our savings,
Right.
and let it. They prosper. They prosper,
That's right.
and they prosper almost on our ignorance.
That's right. It's really back to that. And my dad told me that, right? Consume. Yeah, and we teach that, learn that in finances. You either consume today, or you consume today at tomorrow's expense.
Yeah. Wow. That's
Right.
the word.
And so
Yeah.
you have to forego. I mean, most people don't make enough money where you can have a big house, big cars, whatever. And then when you're 70 or 60 and you got to put kids through college, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to do both. And
Yeah.
so there's a period of time where somewhere along in your adult time where you have to delay consumption.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You delay. A lot like delay. I always call it delayed gratification.
That's
You
right.
know. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. You got Thomas. Now, someone watching, they have $1,000, maybe even $3,000 to $5,000,
Sure.
and they want it. They want to get into this road called investing. They want to invest it. They want to invest in something other than put it under their pillow, under their mattress.
Right.
How do they go about trying to find what tool, what instrument to use for an initial investment?
Sure. Well, it's crazy. Even in the last 10 years or so, it's become so much easier, particularly for those that are internet astute. Right. You can go to Fidelity. If you're younger, you can go to Robinhood. You can go to anywhere, Charles Schwab, online. If you want to go in person, you can go in person. But you go online, get out to open an account, right? Much like a bank, and you can place a deposit. So the actual logistics of doing it is pretty straightforward. The big question once you do that is, well, I don't know what to do with it. And that's what most people's problem is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where to start. And the question, the way you start is something that's familiar. I think people try to say, all this stuff with GameStop or AMC, don't do that, right?
Yeah,
start with where you go. And what I start with is like, what do you do, right? I go to Walmart. Walmart's always packed.
Yeah.
In 5 years, is Walmart going to be at where it is now or better? Yeah. I think that's
absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so you start off with something that So Walmart is a good. Nike. When people say I don't know what to invest in, well, what do you have? What do you buy? What do you consume?
Yeah.
What do the people around you consume?
Yeah.
And there you go. That's a way to start, right? If you have a Ford and everyone around you has a Ford truck, Ford's selling a lot of trucks. Maybe you should look into Ford.
Ford, yeah.
Right. If you don't know that company, you shouldn't be involved in it, at least not early on, right? What people hear is, oh, Tesla, I know Tesla. There's more Teslas. What do you know about Tesla?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know anything other than you shouldn't be in Tesla.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I use the Walmart example, because everyone knows Walmart. Right. And so I say start out simple. Then you start out with Walmart or something that's familiar to you. And then you'll hear something about, oh, let's say Pfizer is a vaccine, one of the vaccine creators. Right. Well, I would think and there might be boosters in the future, right?
Yeah.
So that means, right? Yeah. So they're going to be making more money in the future. That might be a good investment.
Right.
And that's that chess moves thing. But first of it is a lot of people don't, not even immerse yourself, but kind of think that way. Like, oh, I go to, Costco once a month and I spend $400 or $500. And there's always people in Costco. Well, there you go. Right. I don't think people think about the stuff you consume is the stuff people buy.
Yeah.
You got everyone in your house has a Samsung phone or an app or an iPhone, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, there you go.
Right. Things that you already are using, you're familiar with, and you see the traffic associated with it. That's a very good point. That's a very basic, simple introductory phase to investing. I never heard that before like that, but that makes a lot of sense.
And then work out from there. Yeah.
Right from there. Now, there are others who are online and they're wondering, how do I know who to put my money, whose hands to put my money into? How do you go about finding? There's so many. You said Charles Schwab and so many. How do you know who to go to? How do you know that in fact you don't just give this money and just just what are some guidelines?
To me, because people do this all the time and they run into these issues. To me, bigger names are usually better. By that, I mean, you see this about these athletes all the time, right? Mostly because they have so much money that they can lose it. I guess it doesn't matter. You hear some guy who works somewhere had some money. What you didn't hear was some guy at Fidelity or some guy at Charles Schwab stole some money from somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's why I said kind of the big name companies, first of all, because they have lots of fail safes in play. And so you're not likely to have like your money's a Bernie Madoff situation where your money's just gone, right? So that's one place to go. They have investment advisors everywhere, right? But the thing is, different investment advisors' emphasis is different. So, for instance, if you go to an investment advisor, they make the most money off of insurance. Okay. So if you or a planner, I would say a financial planner. Most financial planners will tell you need more insurance, life insurance, right? So let's say I invest $1,000 to give you an example. If I invested $1,000, the investment advisor makes like 2% pre-tax based on what so we're talking $20 pre-tax. Okay. If I can get you to buy a life insurance policy that with a yearly premium of $1,000, I make about between $800 and $900.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm saying that to say you have to watch what the incentives are, I guess I would say, right? Okay. Some investment advisors will say, we pay a yearly fee. You pay us $300, whatever it is. We do a plan for you. We give you recommendations. Under the assumption you want an investment advisor, that's the one you want. Okay. Because they're like a doctor or a lawyer. Their duty is to you. If they do something wrong, you can sue them because they're not trying to sell you a product. Right. Their idea is, okay, your plan, you want to retire. Most people when they're young aren't thinking about that. But as you get older, right, you like, well, I have a kid in college. I got a 401k. I probably have an old 401k. Got a lot of stuff going on. Then maybe I need a financial plan and get one every few years, like a checkup, right? Yeah. So that's the way I think most people should probably do it who aren't that financially astute. Go to a planner and go pay for a plan every 1 to 3 years. And then at 3 years, get a checkup. Where we now from where we were 3 years ago. Yeah.
Because by that time, not only has the economy perhaps changed, but your life has changed.
That's right.
Station in life. You got children, you don't have children, but things have changed. So that's a very, very good. So can you communicate to the audience this thing called a mutual fund?
Sure.
You hear a lot about mutual fund. What's a mutual fund?
Okay, so a mutual fund is just a collection of stocks, right? So back to Walmart, you could go out to that Charles Schwab account and buy 1 share of Walmart. But that's only one company, right? If something bad happens, your money's all in Walmart, right? Well, most people don't have necessarily enough money to buy Walmart, and they may want some Microsoft and some Facebook, whatever. Okay, so what mutual funds do are buy a collection of stock for you. So when you buy the mutual fund, inside the mutual fund are a bunch of different stocks. And so they diversify for you. And so what most people tend to buy, like in your 401ks, 403bs, is some set of mutual funds, which is basically just a collection of stock that the investment company bought.
Is that a safe investment?
Generally speaking, yes, right? Because relative to buying an individual stock, right? Safe is relative now, right? I mean, if your money's in the bank account, you're earning 0.2, 8%, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So in theory, you're losing money as the money's in the bank, right? So SAFE has changed to some degree in that when you say SAFE, right, I could buy a mutual fund of companies no one's ever heard of, and that would be a riskier mutual fund, right?
Right.
But I could buy a mutual fund of Walmart, Procter and Gamble, Pfizer, etc., and then those are safer. So mutual funds come in all kind of shapes and form.
Okay.
But generally speaking, there's 9,000 mutual funds out there. Okay, so there's a mutual fund for everybody. Yeah. Right. If you want a safe mutual fund, they're certainly out there.
Wow. Thomas, now that brings us to a word in which you used a moment ago, which was where I was going. What is your philosophy on banks?
Yeah.
How do you perceive banks? Because a lot of people get in trouble, have over expectations. Banks. Why do banks even exist? And then is putting your money in a bank, is that a good investment?
From an investment perspective, absolutely not. Right. When I was a kid, we had money in CDs. Right. Back then, people just put money in CDs.
Yeah.
In the 80s, CDs were paying 9%. Right. Today, a CD might be paying 1.5%. I don't know what they're paying now. So you're right. And my wife and I talk about this a lot. Holding a lot of money in a bank account these days, I mean, I don't, but because really your money's losing value there now. So if you're thinking about it from an investment perspective, there's just not much there, right? But as a consumer trying to get something out of it, a loan or whatever, kind of a different issue. But for me, I view banks as holding patterns. I don't like to keep a lot of money in banks, not because I'm freaked out about the banks, but because the investment return is just not good.
It's not good at all. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So which raised the question for someone who've never thought about this, is that how does a bank work?
Sure. That you know what, people don't realize and think about this, right? You put money in a bank, the bank then transforms your money. In essence, it's excess savings for you. Because if you're going to spend it, you wouldn't put it in the bank. In theory, be in your pocket. So you put it in the bank, and then the bank then takes your money and then loans it out to somebody else who needs it. The way the banks make money, excuse me,
bless you,
is they make the difference between the two.
Okay.
So, right. So they give you 0.5%. And then they loan out at 5%, and they make 4.5%
on your money.
And that's how banks make basically all of their money. The thing about banks that people have to realize is that it works on an honor system, because if at any given time, let's assume 20% of the country went to the banks on the same day, the banking system would collapse.
Okay.
Right? Because think about it. Your deposit, while it's there, is not actually there.
Yeah.
Right. The banks don't make money holding your money; they make it making loans. So every time you think about it, banks only are required to hold about 10% of their deposits. The rest of the time, that money's being loaned out somewhere else.
Wow.
Right. So if you think about it, it's not like the bank is holding. In the old days, you make a 30-year loan, or you go to the bank to get a mortgage. The bank would hold that loan for that time period. Banks don't do that anymore. They sell your loan off to Fannie Mae, right? And then they get money back, and then they make another loan, and they do it again and again and again and again. Right? And so it's one reason why the economy kind of moves so quickly now, because banks don't hold loans anymore. They'll make, that's why your mortgage gets sold off like multiple times, right?
Yeah.
Student loans get sold off multiple times. Right. The purpose for that is that they can keep making loans, which is why in 2008 it all stopped. Right.
Yeah.
So, but people, in theory, banks are supposed to allocate capital, right? In essence, people who have excess money to people who need money, loans, right? In theory, that's how they're supposed to work. And so people who need business loan, whatever, will go to the bank will assess your credit worthiness and make loans. But the broader 30,000 feet up idea is banks are better at what do you want to say? Spreading capital to the people who need it the most.
Who need the most? Right. You know, I've heard people being disheartened whenever they put money in the bank and then they went for a loan themselves and they had money in the bank, they couldn't even get a loan.
Right. Yeah. Now that happens all the time, right? And here's the reason why now, because when interest rates came down, basically you're going to want to do one or two things. If you don't have good credit, you're going to have a hard time getting a decent loan from a bank. Mm-hmm. If your credit's, but here's the thing, because interest rates are so low, it's hard for the bank to take on the risk of making the loan when they could just hold the cash.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because, right, it's the other side of it, right? I could loan a mortgage loan for 3.5%. Historically, that's really low. What if you default, right? Mm-hmm. Banks don't want to own homes, no matter what people think. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to own the home and then have to try to resell it and all that. Yeah. I'd rather just not originate the loan.
Yeah.
I don't want the risk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 2020, what would banks probably be saying? I don't want the risk. I don't want any of the risk.
Yeah. And that's good to know for those who are wondering, why do I have money in this bank? I can't get a loan. Well, that's the reason. They don't want to assume the risk associated with it.
Let's in the best case scenario, right? Let's assume it's that, right? And there are other avenues, right? Going to the SBA, which is supposed to be, the Small Business Association, where, depending on the type of loan that you're looking for, right? Sometimes the banks are not the greatest place, particularly in the age of the internet, et cetera. Aren't the traditional brick and mortar banks may not necessarily be the best place to go, right? I mean, we got our home loan from Quicken, and I never met anybody other than signing the mortgage documents. We did it all online.
Yeah.
Oh, you can get a loan online without ever meeting anyone in person, go through a credit check, etc. So I'm saying, in that viewpoint, right, the way the economy works right now, if you've got really good credit, you should be able to get a loan. Mm-hmm. If your credit is off a little bit or you're in the gray area, they're going to say no.
They're going to say no, yeah.
Right? And I think that's the thing that a lot of us have to work on, which gets back to that where I started with that credit card debt. You have that debt, makes everyone say, we don't want that.
Tell me this, we're on a higher level dealing with finance. We see on the news every day, sometimes you glance at it for a little while, something called the stock exchange. And we hear the words, the Dow closed at such and such today. What does all that mean?
Okay, so for instance, the Dow is actually a physical exchange. It's in Lower Manhattan. It used to be pre 9/11, you could actually go and view the exchange. I mean, you could go and watch the trading. Okay. The Dow encompasses the 30 largest companies, give or take, in the country that are publicly traded. So when it says the Dow traded at or closed at 34,000, it's an index that's based on the price of each of the 30 stocks in the index. It changes every couple of years. So that's the one. Then there's another one, the S&P 500. The S&P 500 are the largest 500 companies that are public in the U.S. Okay, so the Apples, Microsoft, Facebooks, Googles, Amazons, Netflix, all the biggest 500. And so the reason why we pay attention to that is that it's kind of a proxy for the overall market, right? So when we see an upward from day to day, we don't pay attention to it. But if we see, weeks and months of upward movement, right, it's telling us companies are making more and more money, right? And so the S&P is really the one that we pay the most attention to because it's the 500 largest companies. If they're doing good, the thought generally goes the rest of the economy is doing good. They're hiring people, they're making more money. Hopefully workers are making more money. It's not always the case, but we hope that's what's going. But that's really the benchmark. That's why we pay attention to the S&P 500. And there are mutual funds that track the S&P 500. Okay.
So it's a barometer for how the economy is doing, how it will be doing. So if it's closing at a positive, it's a great thing. If it's a negative or it's dipping significantly, and we know that there's some danger on the horizon. What you're saying?
Yeah, and we like to look at it over you want to see it based on a trend. So the one thing I would just tell viewers is think of it not as today, like today was a bad day, right? But what's happened over the last month? What's happened over the last 2 or 3 months? It's been going up, right? We're going to have these days it goes down, and then probably Monday it'll kick back up again. But it's a general barometer. When when this happened, what happened to the a year ago? Where were we? Market 10.
I'm certain that with your background, at some point in time, you heard someone approach you wanting to know, man, how can I get rich? How can I become wealthy? How can I change my financial family tree? What counsel do you give them?
Well, there's a couple ways, right? For the average person, it's three. You either need to come up with an idea, right? Be with someone else who came up with an idea, inherit the money, or you've got to save. For most of us, we're number 4, right? Is that we have to be savers. And that means starting early. I mean, I could run the numbers to tell you, if you save something like $500 a month for starting at age 25 and did it for 10 years and never did it again, right? By the time you get to 65, you'd have $1 million on average, right? Is most people's problem in terms of being quote unquote rich is the savings problem.
It's good.
It's the savings, not the although we all want to have ideas and all that, but it's the savings problem. And most people, I have friends who are medical doctors who run through money like it's water. It's a savings problem, right? And that's for the average person, that's the big thing. The other one is, what's your skill, right? I have students all the time who, let's say, work at racetrack or somewhere and say, I want to go work. I want to get a new job, right? Or I have a job now, not a career. Well, what do you want to do? Finance, but you work at racetrack. Right? Well, I'm just a cashier at racetrack. They're finance people who work inside of racetrack, right? Sometimes we're looking so far around that we don't look at the skills that we already have or the places we already have might be the best places for us to move forward versus trying to move somewhere else.
That's a good answer. The skill. What's the skill set? Yeah.
I mean, if you look at, okay, a couple people I know who started a business. One guy, one of my fraternity brothers at A&M, was an engineer. He worked for Accenture. He was on a project with some computer system. There were 4 people on that project. I think one left the industry, one retired, and the other guy, they don't know where he is. He was the only guy who knew the code for this particular company. He started his own business and did consulting for companies, and that was his first firm. And then he grew out from that, right?
Wow.
And it's like that for truck. If you're a trucker and say, I don't want to work for UPS, you can go get a truck, right? You can go buy your own truck and move your own loads.
Yeah, Thomas. Yeah.
So it's your skill set, right? And then it's first is realizing that it doesn't, you're thinking as that what the next person is. No, what do you have? And then let's use what you have and stretch that. I think people look at somewhere else like, how do I get there? No, well, let's look at what you have and let's move from there.
Yeah. I love that, because some people thinking about, maybe winning a lottery, or thinking about, maybe just doing what they've seen, maybe going to a reality television show or something like that. But what is your skill? What do you already have? I always say, how has God constructed you? What is your composition? What is your passion? And a way to monetize your passion.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that's great, Thomas. That is great. Oh my God, you have helped the kitchen table so much. Thomas, I'm going to give you the last word, because I know you've got people's heads spinning right now, but you've made it so simple, and we appreciate that. I want to give you the last word. I want you to speak to our young audience.
Yep.
To those between the ages of 20 and 30. And they want some quick money.
Sure.
Some are in the Bitcoin and other investment ideas. What would be your counsel to the 20 to 30-year-olds who's trying to hit it and hit it fast?
Yeah, it's this actually same thing I told your kids. It's Jonathan, you work. I mean, Zachary, you working, stack some money, save some money, right? Early, so most get rich quick schemes are just that. They're schemes, right? Bitcoin is lucky. Do you know anything about Bitcoin? Do you understand it, right? It's much like Walmart or Tesla, whatever. If you don't understand something, please don't invest in it, right? If you want to buy a house and you don't understand the contract, talk to someone, but please don't put your name on something that you don't understand, right? And I think one thing is you either have to become informed in anything, everything you do, right? Mm-hmm. Knowledge, all right? You have to become informed and then make decisions. Realize that too often we're not becoming informed and just making decisions, going with the crowd, Bitcoin, going with the crowd, AMC, GameStop, whatever the case, right? So I would say this is a marathon, hopefully not a sprint.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is slow, and we're back to the tortoise and the hare, right?
Yeah.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
Right. It just doesn't. I mean, I know that when I was 20, I thought I was real close to making a whole bunch of money, but it didn't happen. And I realized had it happened, I probably wouldn't have been prepared to take care of it properly. Right?
Yeah. Tom, that's an awesome what you're saying, because it's so much in opposition to what media says, and certainly social media. In other words,
sure.
Get it now by any means necessary. Just get it. But you're talking about the process of preparing yourself. That the question always, if you get it, then what? So if you haven't prepared yourself to get it, then when you get it, you probably won't keep it.
It's not gonna. That's right.
Yeah, we won't keep it. Wow. Well, kitchen table.
Knowledge. It's the knowledge.
It's the knowledge. Kitchen table. I told you, we always try to get the best that we can get. You heard it right from a guy who's a high end of dealing with finance and the high end of teaching financiers, and yet he made it so simple that even the goats can get to it. Okay, it's easy to get to. So share it with your family, share it with your friends. What you heard here at the kitchen table. Dr. Williams, thank you for gracing us with your time here at the kitchen table. I'll see you next week right here at the kitchen table.